Okay, we are on.
Good day, how are you today? My name is Mike Davis. I am the president of the American Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy to have you guys here today. We're going to talk about security and foreign direct investment in Uganda. Today we have a different approach. In the past we've had Zoom, or we had 3 Zooms, and everybody's talking online. This time we decided to have it slightly in person. First I'd like to introduce Honorable Minister Jim Muhwezi. Thank you for being here. And then the RSO, the Regional Security Officer for the U.S. Embassy, Bleakmore. And we'll talk about today foreign direct investment in Uganda and how do we secure investments for American investors, make sure the security environment's good for investment as well as the current investment in Uganda. As kind of a precursor to this, the American Chamber has been working closely with the Ugandan Investment Authority, and we've recently signed an MOU to help encourage American investors to come to Uganda to invest in the country, invest in the region, and grow the economy, create jobs, increase the tax base for American brands, American investors. In addition, that leads into other work we've been doing with other chambers in the region, the American chambers of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ethiopia, to bring in regional companies who may have an operation in Ethiopia who may not be able to operate now, have them relocate to Uganda as their base of operations from that security situation that's changed. We've also been working with the Indian Business Forum, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, to help represent all foreign investors in Uganda, to have a constant communication with everybody, to share ideas about how we can improve the tax environment, improve the security environment, etc. I think this is a critical component of how we want to move forward, is talking about security is a key thing for all investors to ensure their assets, their personnel are secure in this environment. So I think let's go ahead and start. Let me pull up my questions real quick. Sorry about that. And the first thing is, let me ask Dan. We actually met through OSAC. So regarding American and foreign investment in Uganda, can you give an idea of what OSAC is? And kind of, it's called the Overseas Security Advisory Council. Can anyone join? Do you have to be American? Like, how do you get involved in that, and what is it exactly?
Thanks for the question, Mike. And OSAC is the Overseas Security Advisory Council. It is meant to be the public and private communicative partnership between the U.S. government and U.S. interested organizations. When it comes to membership, I would point American organizations to the osac.gov website. You can look at some of the resources they have about membership. The charter that we've drafted here for Uganda representatives is a bit more inclusive than some other posts overseas, in an effort to be a bit more welcoming to American interested organizations. We've extended it to U.S. taxpayer-funded programs, development partners, and look to go from what was a few dozen members, I think, in the early days of about 2 years ago, to 3 or 4 dozen active members now. And that can change as folks' contracts expire with the U.S. government. They'll probably be replaced by other groups. But as a starting point for this, being an American interested organization, that could be a foreign-owned U.S. brand. There's not an exclusive threshold on what allows entry or prohibits it. If we work together, if there's a strong American interest or tie with an organization, we welcome them into this collective, which right now exists of virtual membership. We haven't had an OSAC network get-together through the pandemic, but we've maintained an active WhatsApp group, and it really shares information across the spectrum of members. That the U.S. government would provide security information as we know it, and oftentimes it's the others who are up-country in areas that are affected by security incidents that can report the most relevant information to share with that group. So osac.gov is the best entry point for more information on that group.
Okay, great, thank you. I know during the recent terrorist attacks, that group was extremely active. Obviously my office is right next to where it happened. Jim, What would you say about, the recent security situation with the terrorist attacks? How do you think it's going to affect more investment here? How can we work together to work with the Ugandan government, the security operations within the government, to work with OSAC, to work with the private sector, to get more...
And many arrested, others, of course, killed. So the good news is that now that DRC Congo has allowed us to operate together, UPDF, Uganda Army, to go into DRC, there is going to be peace for a long time.
That's good to hear.
Yes, because their training grounds have been attacked, destroyed. Their cells here, the leaders have been arrested. We have over 100 people in cells, including their leader, Jamil Mkulu, in prison. We are talking to the people whom they are confusing, the young people whom they lie that they are going to get jobs. When they get them over there, they intimidate them. I don't know whether you've been seeing the gruesome, these videos of how they kill those who want to escape, then intimidate them, radicalize them, and so on. But now, I think the security forces are, on top of the situation, and there should be no problem.
That's really good to hear. Well, how do obviously the Americans have something called OSAC, and I don't know, are there any mechanisms for the security organizations in the Ugandan government to interact with private sector on a regular basis?
Oh yes.
And what kind of systems are there in place for that? Is there, I know we have our OSAC, WhatsApp group, but are there other mechanisms for that, especially for foreign investors?
Yes. No, as you know, Uganda is very transparent, and we work with all organizations, and I'm sure we should be, our police, Uganda police force must be liaising with the security organizations, with the embassies, the big ones like the United States. We work with them, and we are willing to work with them to collaborate, and it's the only way to go, because this ADF is an outfit of IS, the Islamic State. In fact, when these bombs went off, the Islamic State claimed responsibility. So it's not a Ugandan problem. It's a regional problem. It's an international problem. And so there must be collaboration of working together. And then for the investors in Uganda, definitely we have to work with them, and they need to work with the police at all times, so that if there is any information, they need to share with us. If there is any threat, we share, and we handle it.
Okay, great, thank you. Obviously security measures are pretty heavily in place already. What are you anticipating as new security measures, not just in response to these attacks, but over the coming next year or two, as COVID is changing, where the measures that we have for that are going to dissipate over the next 2 years, the attacks that happen, the ADF, what in the next 2 years do you see as new measures going to be taking place that will affect businesses, affect individuals living here, that would affect our businesses here?
No, I don't think there should be any adverse measures that would affect business. The only important thing is vigilance on the part of everybody, not only investors, but all people, to be vigilant, to check people who come in their area who are not known, to have measures, security measures about, especially in public places, the luggage checked, the metal detectors, both human and artificial intelligence being used maybe a bit of inconvenience in terms of checking and, profiling people, explaining. We are using foundation security, the people to know the people living around them. There is a newcomer, identify him, find out. That is the kind of new thing that new norm.
Go. The concept of LC1s,
Yes.
LC2s, LC3s is very new to us
Yes.
because we don't really have that methodology from where I'm from originally. So I think that's one thing that I think from an education standpoint it might be very beneficial for OSAC to convey. How do you work with your local councils and your
Yes.
local representatives?
Yeah.
Or the local police. I mean, I've been lucky enough in my neighborhood to work with. We have 2 police stations in our neighborhood, and we are on our security group. But how do you engage on that in a different fashion? Now, Dan, what recommendations do you have? What best practices do you have? I mean, you've lived in many places, and you've seen different environments, like from very nice environments, very bad environments. What do you have for Americans and other foreign investors living here with regards to personal security, criminal elements? Are there differences between Kampala Metro and upcountry? We're in Moroto versus Mbarara, for example.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Talk about what each of us can do to help keep ourselves safe, and it's advice that I would give in my position in any country, in Paris, Canberra, anywhere, is to exercise vigilance and to not be perceived as an easy target. Oftentimes, I think criminals would be criminals, just idle individuals who may have some economic desperation. And if you were to walk by, displaying valuables and being distracted, and in an area where someone could get away with a property crime, it's quite possible they would. So if we do our part to mitigate that risk and to be vigilant about our surroundings, I think that goes a long way in using the security resources that you have. The simple things that in any big city, locking your car doors, windows up, and not being distracted, driving defensively. We spend a lot of time counseling our folks on driving is dangerous around the world, and especially so in a big city like Kampala. So a lot of the reporting that we get in our offices for U.S. mission members and American citizens who are affected by traffic accidents or being a pedestrian to be struck by a boda or something like this. So there's a number of scenarios in which people can be affected on crime and safety. And in general, having that awareness of your surroundings, what's normal, understanding where generally safe areas might be. Typically that's going to be police stations where Ugandan security services can provide an additional layer of safety. But so much is driven by the scenario. That if it's crime, property crime, we just ask that people safely survive the encounter, not offering unnecessary resistance. Property is simply property. We care most about safety to life. Anything you can do to get through a security incident, we have a lot of confidence in the Ugandan police force to help with investigative follow-ups on crimes. But really, folks just need to use the resources they have at their disposal and remain vigilant, and that's universally sound advice.
And kind of as a follow-up to that, how can the Ugandan security operations, the American security operations, work more closely together? As I said before, with like the LC1s, LC2s, LC3s, or the RDCs in your area, like that concept does not exist from the most foreign investors. When they come here, they don't have that concept in their home area. Are there ways that you're engaging with that local, down to that grassroots level, or is it more at the higher level? And is there a way we can in the future?
No, I think I would address it as pre-COVID and what we're trying to evolve back into, which is routine communication with community-based policing at every level, and then also more strategically with our counterparts at the senior levels. of Ugandan police force. We do have our defense attaché who works closely with the defense forces and other offices that work with the Ugandan government. But on security, I wouldn't say that we're focused at the strategic or tactical level. We're pretty evenly spread, and I think it's fair to say this has suffered somewhat with a lack of physical interaction. But during better times when we've been able to engage and travel more freely, engaging with Ugandan police and other security services on bilateral training programs, this is where we find some of our best relationships, is for them to gain an understanding of some of the priorities for U.S. law enforcement and security, and we can learn what the challenges are of the governments that provide those security personnel to U.S. sanctioned training. And it's helpful for both of us. I think the recipient of the training gets a new perspective on different priorities, and the U.S. gains a great appreciation for the challenges faced here on the ground. And there's big, high-level engagement, but also our staff, our office is dozens strong who engage with traffic police and beat cops, the type of folks that are going to be patrolling neighborhoods. And we have frequent communication with those folks, so they know where our priorities lie. And we find them to be very supportive, very accommodating to the security needs of the U.S. mission, and also in our responsibility towards American citizens and interests in Uganda.
Great, thank you. One of the newer, or relatively newer, things that's coming up with cybercrime. You see this is happening more and more as we move with mandates from Bank of Uganda to move away from cash. Getting cash from the bank is harder and harder every day. They want people to move money towards electronic systems. How is the Ugandan government starting to address that issue with regards to cybercrime? How are we training the as you said, the B cops, the CID, to address those issues with people who are affected? I mean, what systems are in place for that, especially on that?
Yeah, no, this is one of the new crimes, of course, that have come with the development of technology. Cyber crime is a challenge, but we are investing in training, in sharing information, in acquiring modern artificial intelligence to monitor what is going on and to protect information and to share information with the allies. It's a new problem. It's a big challenge, of course, but we are developing the capabilities, sharing with the countries in this area, and we are trying to protect our investors in that area. Of course, we have, as a government, put new regulations in place. We have Financial Intelligence Authority monitoring what is going on in the financial sector and so on. So we have a lot going on, but it's work in progress, as they say.
Understood. And Dan, from your side, how would you recommend American businesses, individuals, foreign investors, how would you recommend they protect themselves in terms of that kind of context? In terms of especially during COVID, the last 2 years, everybody has been stuck at home, moving online, moving to electronic means. How would you recommend people protect themselves or businesses protect themselves in that fashion?
No, I agree that this type of crime is relatively new, but some of the solution and mitigation is kind of old. The same thing we talk about for physical and property crimes apply to cyber crimes as well. Vigilance and awareness of who you're dealing with and the transparency. The U.S. Embassy sees attempts at fraudulent job just need to know, have transparency among our staffs on where our obligations lie, and if somebody's asking for something, we have a process in place. An inward look at management controls so those folks can't be successful trying to swindle somebody through IT systems, through virtual means. On a base level, I think it's comforting to know that business in Uganda, credit cards are quite ubiquitous. We see them at restaurants, and lodging and accommodation is normal. And it seems almost without exception as they bring the card reader to your table. So you're not surrendering your card to somebody who disappears for some period of time. So requesting that and demanding it, and to not let your financial instruments be separated from you for any period of time, controlling your own resources really helps mitigate some of the risk on those cyber financial vulnerabilities. But you have to know who you're dealing with, who's entitled to certain communication. And when you know your audience, it's easier to pick out who doesn't belong, who's intruding in your space, and to notify the appropriate authorities if you feel you're being victimized. But it's best to get it out front, to identify it, to share that information among your staff, especially if you have a security office, to let them engage with the police and their financial crimes unit. I think the resources are there for this to not be a detriment to engagement and investment. That cyber crimes don't have our geographic boundaries, right? You can be, financially assaulted from somebody thousands of miles away, and it becomes difficult for the law enforcement aspect of it, which just means you have to put a little bit more work up front in providing your own internal safeguards and management controls to mitigate this threat.
So again, it's vigilance. Part of everything. Because the government cannot come to your business and protect. You have to protect yourself and be vigilant and report to police. And then the police has capacity. That's why I was talking about investigate after you have reported. Then we have the capability to follow up and apprehend the culprit.
Yeah, so it's good. I mean, cyber, as I said, cybercrime is increasing. There were some reports about how the banks have lost tens of millions of dollars in Uganda from cyber crimes. And I think it's really important, as someone who has had an attack on them already in Uganda, is you see that, and there is mechanisms for that. It's just how do we continue to be more vigilant and protect ourselves for that. Dan, what would you suggest to every American or foreign family or business to keep in their homes and office in case of emergency here? We both worked in areas way much more dangerous than Uganda. And I know that I have my mechanisms in place for that. But what would you recommend for American families, especially those living in Uganda? I mean, it's relatively safe, but what kind of things would you recommend?
Sure. I think planning and preparation is a universal security consideration, no matter where you are. We've been, as unfortunate as we've been on public health and security recently, it's proven to us that we are prepared, we are planning, that we've had 2 years of difficulty that shows us where our priorities need to be. And early on, I think post-elections, there were some difficulties and folks needed to know whether they'd be able to move around, get from the home to the office. And if you just anticipate the worst case scenario that you can't, how sustainable is it to stay in your office longer than you had intended? How comfortable would you be at home if delivery service stopped? You just have to push your imagination to its most uncomfortable and think that if things got worse than they've been, and you're not able to leave your home, if you're not able to leave the country easily for an extended period of time, you can think about those priorities of shelter and food, just to make sure that you're able to sustain your existence. I feel pretty confident that security can be managed effectively by our host government. The Ugandans are pretty effective in their ability to investigate and provide adequate security. But individually, we just have to make sure that you can survive without internet, you can survive without power. So it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But if you can envision that scenario, then it kind of comes naturally to what services and supplies you might want at home and at work and at home. But in general, I think it's always wise to have your important documents within reach and ready to go, that if you did need to reunite with family back home for any eventual crisis here, is that you've got the ability to do so quickly. So it's only limited by one's imagination, but in general, food, shelter, administration, and finances are probably at the forefront of any emergency planning considerations.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
But of course, viewers, I hope I'm not getting an impression. We are in a war situation, and where we must think of basics. No, there is life is normal.
Yep.
But should there be a problem, indeed, as Dan is saying, those are the considerations to be taken. But right now, life is normal.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Point taken. It's
yes.
always the most delicate aspect of a security conversation is talking about a worst case scenario. And I don't want to give anybody the indication that things are moving in that direction. This is a place where, if I could speak briefly, that the American Embassy, we often provide our advice and guidance in the context of what are we doing for U.S. mission staff. And we communicate well with Ugandan security services, and internally at the U.S. Embassy we communicate well with our American Citizens Service Office in crafting language, advice, and guidance so people can get an appreciation for where we feel the overall security situation is here. And when we deliberate at the embassy, we talk about what our security posture is. And I think it's important to share that context that even through the recent bombings, the U.S. Embassy did not alter its security posture. You know, there's a general threat rating that we apply to all countries around the world, and to have a medium terrorism threat rating is just, if we ascribe the same rating in the United States, it's likely where it would be. That potential acts of terrorism are possible, but the impact on U.S. interests, U.S. operations would be moderate. It gets to be kind of a delicate line or two of questioning, but that was the threat rating before the bombings, and after some careful deliberation, it was the threat rating that remained after the bombings, because it's just understood that you'll have malign actors looking to disrupt government operations, the status quo, and as tragic as the events are, we have to provide that bit of context that it appears as if they're manageable through the hard work and dedication of Ugandan security services.
I would even say the same thing about living in America.
Yeah.
I mean, the threats are there very similarly. So, Uganda is a safe place. I've been here quite a while. It's an extremely safe place. But there's always, I would have to look at the worst case scenario and those kinds of things.
Right. Yes.
Now, Minister, over the next 5 years, I mean, what security challenges do you see for foreign investors, the country, over the next 5 years? I mean, obviously, the president will come up for election again in 4 years. Yeah. Potential for change. In the next 5-6 years, where do you see some of those security challenges? Because when investors come to Uganda, they're not investing for 3 years. They're not investing for one presidential term. They're investing for an extended period. Beyond, the next 5 years, the next election period, where do you see those challenges? What do you see where foreign investors could how would I say it, craft their risk profile based for their investment? So when an investor comes in there saying, okay, here's my risks, do I relocate to Kenya, to Rwanda, to Uganda as my base of operations? What do you see coming up in those next 6, 7, 8 years?
I think it's a positive challenge. I think the investors will have a very big propensity to wish to bring their investment to Uganda. I'm looking at the oil, economy is going to boom when we pump oil out of the ground in the 2-3 years. I see Uganda as a land-linked country to Eastern Congo, to South Sudan, and the other countries. Uganda is going to be a big investment destination, and I think there will be big feeling by companies to bring their investment to Uganda. In terms of security, we are going to be stronger. NRM government, our strong point is security. In fact, that's why it's being attacked. Because all the years we are being voted into power, one of the big reasons is security, especially by government. We used to have state-inspired violence, the government itself attacking its people, which is not the case. UPDF, NRA, which became UPDF, came up with stringent rules. We are one of the few armies who still execute our soldiers when they commit crimes. And this has brought discipline in our security forces. The only problem has been this insecurity coming from outside Uganda, Eastern Congo, where we needed to reach. But now that we are going there, I see we are going to have stability, security, 100%, because we are working with the population, as we talked about, the LOC system, where we are, and we understand everybody who is in our community, where we have police and other security agencies working together. And I think there shouldn't be any threat for any foreign investor coming to Uganda.
Great, thank you. And yeah, from your side, the embassy side, I mean, are you guys looking forward to that distance, that 6, 7, 8 years? And how do we persuade more American investors to come here? Because as the minister said, it's a great destination. I mean, oil is booming. Tourism. I mean, the tourism locations are amazing. It's a central logistics hub for hundreds of millions of people in the region. So how are you guys looking at that in terms of how do we create a risk profile? Because I know there's an American embassy program where investors come in and they ask the U.S. embassy, what's it like? How do you guys frame that conversation?
Well, we have an office dedicated opportunities for American corporations to invest and try to give them the clearest picture of what this environment is like for American investment. And I think the best lens through which we can view future potential of investment in Uganda is to look at the status quo, which is inviting. It's a place that is safe, a relative term, but it's as safe as a place where I would want to invest myself. The risks that are inherent here in Uganda seem to be mitigated effectively by the security services. So I don't want to speak outside of my lane of expertise on economic and investment issues, but it is a core pillar of why the U.S. Embassy is here, and that's to spur U.S. engagement in its host country. And in this case, it's not a difficult task to simply amplify the existing environment and let folks know that it's normal operations for us. And it's one of the best ways I can describe our situation, because if somebody were to talk about a specific security incident, it certainly sounds dangerous if that's all you're looking at. But as you take that step back and say, hey, the U.S. Embassy is as normal as it's been over the past 2 years, and probably, one step closer to, being really normal. Because as I talk about normal operations, nothing has been normal over the past 2 years. So it's within the public health context to say that we haven't altered our security posture in response to security incidents here, because it hasn't been deemed unnecessary. So business is normal for the American Embassy.
Well, that's good to hear. I think that's all the biggest questions I have for you guys. Do you have any last comments on security situation, investment in Uganda?
Yeah. Well, my comment is that Uganda remains a very secure country, a very good investment destination. We have our strong advantages. We are a plateau at the roof of the continent. Uganda has special climate because of our altitude and latitude. We are astride the equator, but high up because of the mountains. The Kilimanjaro is in the south, the Rwenzori in the west, the Kenya, Mount Kenya in the east. We are high, and about 20% of our land area is fresh water because of Lake Victoria, River Nile, Lake Albert, Lake Choga, Lake Edward, many lakes. So we have fertile soils, good climate, friendly people, good destination for tourism, and now, as I said, with oil coming, with our good relationship with the countries, we are now opening roads, DRC Congo, huge market,
Yes.
and Comesa, so Uganda is a good investment destination.
Great.
And I call upon all investors interested in making money to come to Uganda. Security is guaranteed.
Great to hear. Thank you. And Dan, same.
From us, I think, to address the American citizens, we held a town hall for American citizens in Uganda just yesterday, a virtual town hall, where the ambassador spoke of the importance of communication and understanding of what resources the embassy has, both consular services, American citizen services, and I think for this group, economic services, and that is a key part of why we're here. So on the consular services, I think I'd like to provide just a brief public service announcement that we encourage all Americans to register in our Safe Traveler program, the STEP program. You can find that at travel.state.gov. And it's really important to register. So when we have these security partnerships and when we have security information sharing, we prepare that to share with the broadest American community possible. Just not only the business community, but private travelers, NGOs, and other interests around here. So it starts with being plugged into that program. The other program I had mentioned earlier, osac.gov, give that website a look and consider if your organization has a security representative who would be an ideal candidate for inclusion. It's another great communications network. The STEP program is great for accountability of American citizens in Uganda. The OSAC website and other collective communications applications are great for sharing information that comes up that is difficult to understand with conflicting news reports and rumors going around. It's good to have a communications network you can rely on, someone who has access to the Ugandan police force who can provide official comment on whether something is a false alarm or an actual security event. And I think that's one of the great values that we get from the OSAC collective, is it's a diverse group of folks with contacts at various levels of the UPF who can say, no, that's a rumor, that's unfounded, and we can put a lot of minds at ease fairly quickly through the use of social media. So that's my plug for American Citizen Services. Thanks, Mike.
And I think also from going on to that, from a networking standpoint, the American Chamber of Commerce is a great community resource as well. We have our community where we also have our resources and share and partner with OSAC. As a member of OSAC in many countries I've been involved in, I know that same with the Chamber in many countries I've been involved in, where the network is there and everyone has their contacts and is able to validate a rumor or invalidate a rumor based on that. So I think that's really, really great. So I want to thank you both for your time today.
Yes, and we should thank you, both the American Chamber of Commerce of Uganda, for this opportunity, and to assure the American investors that we shall be working with RUSAC to make sure that everything goes well and your money and your lives are safe in Uganda.
That's appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. So thank you.
Mike.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate your time today, and thank you for listening today. We will continue to go back to a little bit more normal as hopefully the curfew and things change over the next month or two, and have some in-person events where we'll have more discussions, not just on security, but on taxes, on immigration, on investment opportunities. And our partnership with UIA is going to continue to do that, to highlight more opportunities for American investors. And just yesterday, I had a meeting with Ambassador Katende about how to improve American investment in Uganda, as well as the AGOA program, bringing more in products that we're creating here in Uganda to America. So those are coming up in the next few months. I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to be involved, where there's opportunities across the board for all investors. So thank you guys. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.